Welcome, everyone, to Talking Indiana Baseball, Talking Hoosier Baseball. This week, we will preview the beginning of the 2018 baseball season for our Indiana Hoosiers. I'm your host, Brian Tonsoni, and this upcoming Friday, February 16th, Indiana will open up play on the road down south against Oklahoma. So this is our group that will be analyzing Indiana baseball, talking as fans in the bleachers, talking as fans at the tailgate. So let's get started. We're going to open up this podcast with Hoosier highlights of the week. This segment will highlight key moments from the previous week. And since this week is opening week, we're going to talk about what we're excited about this year. For me, I'm just excited to get back to the BART and see some outstanding baseball. I think this is one of the best teams in the last 5 or 6 years. Kind of hard to say that it's might be better than the 2013 team, and I'm not ready to quite say that yet. But we have a lot coming back. We have depth at the very important positions. We have good pitching, good hitting, and I'm just looking forward to hearing the sound of the ball and the bat Friday afternoon in opening day. So let's go around the panel and get everyone's Hoosier highlights. Chris Feeney, what's your Hoosier highlight?
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to what this sophomore class can put together. So much experience from last year. You know, I remember Scatman talked about it right after Lexington ended. You know, when he was a freshman and when a lot of the freshmen come in, they don't contribute so much so early. We had 2 starters. We had a lot of good pitchers. Cal Kruger, Cam Beecham, Sal Frank. Really looking forward to see what they can bring on the mound. And then, you know, Jeremy Houston and Matt Gorski's basically second season because their freshman season, they played the whole year. So really looking forward to seeing what this class can put together. With that much experience, you know, sky's the limit for these guys.
Josh, your Hoosier highlight heading into the season.
I'm excited to see which of the freshman pitchers and transfers end up spending time on the mound. A lot of good young arms coming in. Nick Eaton, who was 19-0 his junior and senior season, pitching with a sub-1 ERA his junior year. So he's an arm we might look out for. But and with Connor Manus and Grant Sloan coming in, the transfers, just where all the pitching for the new guys is going to settle in.
Very good. Carl, who's your highlight?
Mine is just I want to see which of our 3 big bats, Lloyd, Sowers, and Miller, which one of them are going to break out and finally have a superstar season. I think one of them are primed for that, and I really, really want to see who's going to break out the power and then really start to just jack up those numbers and step out. I think they could be fantastic, and I'm just ready to see that breakout.
And introducing our newest member, we're only in podcast 2, but our newest member who's joining us, Cassidy Palmer, 2-time IU alum who now lives in the middle of Missouri. So she would love to see a home and home with Missouri so she can see her beloved Hoosiers. She plays with numbers all day for work, and every time there's an IU baseball game on, she's outstanding with the numbers. Welcome to the podcast, Cassidy, and give us your Hoosier highlight heading into the season.
Yes, so for me, I'm super excited to see the depth that this Hoosier team has all over the place. I mean, you've got Kalitha and Laren Eustace, who can both man center field ably, and you've got Mats everywhere. Gorski can play the outfield. He can play first. You've got Matt Lloyd, who I'm sure will get time at second and on the mound and at DH, and he could also play first and either corner outfield spot, which we saw over the summer. Just all kinds of competition all over the place. I can't wait to see what happens with it.
And in a podcast like this, we can go through and mention 20, 25 names of players that we're probably interested in seeing. Defensively, Jeremy Houston at shortstop is one of my favorite watches when I'm at Bart Kaufman. And I also like to see Luke Miller. One, when he hits the ball, way over the fence, but also he gets so mad every time he makes an out when he turns back to the dugout. And I just love that competitiveness. And so those are a few of our Hoosier highlights that we're kind of looking forward to coming up this season. And we believe it's going to be a fun season. But the reason we have that belief is because of last season. 2017 was an outstanding season. It saw Indiana qualify for postseason baseball. And in that postseason, several of us got together in Lexington. And Chris, share with our listeners and our viewers how we kind of got together and give a little bit of recap of last year and that momentum that's heading this year.
Okay, well, again, for maybe somebody who is new to Indiana baseball or new to just following along, last year we were 34, 24, and 2. So we finished basically 10 games over 500. That was good for third in the Big East, but we were only 2 games out of first. And it was because of a great schedule with a real high RPI and a real high strength of schedule. We ended up a number 2 seed in the Lexington region. First game was against NC State. We had a lead. Didn't go as well as we wanted. Went 12. We lost. 12 hours later, we had to take the field again to play Ohio. We beat them thanks to Stever's complete game and Logan Sauer's 3 homers. And then, the next day we were hoping to play a doubleheader, one against Kentucky, one against NC State. Didn't work out that way. Just Kentucky's bats were too much for us. And, we fought back. We were down big. We fought back, but it wasn't enough. The season ended there. But again, and I've said this to you guys before, and I've said it to friends of mine, I look back at that trip like it was great. I've been to big playoff losses for the Mets or for the Jets, and I don't even want to think about the trip. But I look back at going to that regional, and hanging out with you guys at tailgating, being at the games, the whole thing, as a great experience. And it was a lot of really good experience for the players, too, I think. A lot of players who might not have pitched in games like that or hit in games like that, now they can take that with them to this season.
And so the really important thing about last season is the experience that our team got in that environment. And then also for our group, the experience that we got knowing each other is going to bounce into an excellent year at iubase.com and on this podcast. So without that great last season, we don't have what we have here today. So the next segment that you're going to see on a regular basis here with Talking Indiana Baseball is an awards segment where we look back at the past week and we talk about the best hitter, the best defensive player, and the best pitcher. And hopefully we have a real tough decision every weekend on who that might be. But since this is the opening weekend and the opening podcast, we're going to go around the horn and talk about the player that we think will have the best season. So, and that is just unknown at this point, but who's going to have one of the best seasons? So I'll start it off. I think Luke Miller offensively is going to just have a huge breakout year. And like I said, I just love to see his competitive at-bats. Let's go to you, Josh. Who do you think the player to shine this year will be?
Oh, you could go anywhere in the lineup. I'm going to probably go on the outside of most picks and say Logan Cleatha. Transferring in, probably I would project him to be the leadoff hitter and center fielder. And if he can get on base at a good clip in front of the guys he'll have behind him, he'll be scoring a lot of runs.
That's an interesting pick. He's from Michigan City, which is about 10 minutes from my hometown. So besides being a Hoosier, there's a rooting interest there. Cassidy, who's your pick to click or your Hoosier to shine this season?
Oh, I had so many that I was looking at, but I think the guy who I'm going with is going to be Matt Lloyd because he has so many potential areas to shine with the bat, on the mound, defensively. I think Matt could have a really good year this year.
An excellent choice. Carl, your selection.
I'm going to go with Cam Beecham. The Hoosiers are really going to need a good left-handed arm, and he has just been projected to have really good stuff. And now that it looks like he may have the strike zone more under control, I think he can make a really good impact, even if he's just pitching midweeks or Sunday. Those are all key games, and we could see a lot of W's coming from the games that he pitches.
Were there not reports that he was hitting 94, 95 this fall? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd heard reports along those lines that the velocity was up, but as I said, I was really more gearing on the fact that he was throwing strikes because he's got good stuff. We know he's got good stuff. If he throws strikes, then he could be a really top player. And I know that D1 has him listed as a top prospect for 2019 draft. So he's somebody I think we really need to keep an eye out for.
And that's good because in talking to some friends of his and family members of his velocity had dropped upon coming to IU. And I don't know if that was just a change in something that was done, but obviously that change has been bought in And now if he's back up 93, 94, 95 from the left-handed side, that is a weapon. Let's go to you, Chris. Who is your pick to shine this season?
I'm going to go Jonathan Stever. We had some issues with the Friday nights last year for whatever reason. You know, there were some real outstanding ones. The 1-0 wins that he tossed in that Maryland game, he was rolling along before the rain came. But there were some Fridays we didn't win that we really thought we had. Penn State, Ohio State, whatever the case might have been. I'm looking for Stever to really just dominate. I want Friday nights to be locked, like they were with Donato, like they were with Hart. You know, from what we've been hearing, Stever looked really good in the fall. We saw with our own eyes the velocity go way up. So Stever would be my pick.
And, you know, there's all kinds of players on the team, from our starting pitching to our relievers to Logan Sowers was not mentioned in any of our 5 picks. And this, I think, speaks to the depth. Let's quickly go around and share one more. I'll take Logan Sowers, a 4-year senior, but I think there's even more that are key players. So mine's Logan Sowers. Really quickly, Josh, throw out another name that is going to have a good year that hasn't been mentioned yet.
We didn't do Gorski, did we?
No, Gorski's another one.
Okay. Another guy who might have probably slotted 2 or 5 in the lineup. Had a great season last year and good speed, great defense, especially him moving to a corner, probably left field. Anywhere in our lineup.
Very good choices. Cassidy, another pick to click for this year.
Oh, I'm going with Ryan Feynman. Especially if he can get that bat going, even up to the level he had as a freshman, his defensive ability is just off the charts. And I believe it was Baseball America had him as the top defensive catcher in the conference. He's so great with those back picks. I think Ryan could do really well this year.
Carl, your second choice.
I'm going to go with Jeremy Houston. The fact that he's going to be slotted most likely at that 9th spot, so that's a spot that most teams are not going to have a lot of production come out of, and he has the ability to hit at a much higher clip, to get on base a lot, have the wheels to almost be, as Chris mentioned when we talked last time, to be a second leadoff guy as the lineup turns over, and that can be huge for being able to score runs.
I agree. Chris, your number 2 pick to click.
I'll take Cal Kruger. Now, we had read an interview just recently with College Baseball Central that Coach Lamonis did, and he basically placed Cal in the back end of the bullpen. So last time we had him as a Sunday starter, but right out of Coach's mouth in the interview, he put him as a back end of the bullpen. I'm hoping maybe they're going to use him like an Andrew Miller, like a Scott Efros, you know. He could just shut down games. We'll be up in the 7th inning. We'll put in Kruger and game over. So, I mean, I'm really looking forward to see how he gets used out of that bullpen. Because he wasn't listed as the closer. Neither was Lloyd. They were both put down as back end of the bullpen by Coach. So to have both of them, to have 2 Andrew Millers in the pen, I mean, sign me up.
Hey, and I got to mention my guy, Paulie Milto. What a bulldog on the mound he was last year. Looking forward to seeing him out there. We can go on and on and on. This is a whole podcast probably on what we like about all the players. And there will be some media availability coming out early this week, and maybe we'll get some more information on who's where and what's going on. So look forward to seeing that. But that does it for our awards segment. We're going to move on to a Big Ten preview, and it's going to be each week it'll get better, and as we get into Big Ten play, we'll talk about the big series happening in conference play. And we look to Carl as our expert on analysis, especially RPI. So we're going to combine 2 segments here, and it's going to be Carl. Carl, talk a little bit about the Big Ten as you see it in general and anything that's happening this week, and then also explain to our listeners a little bit about the RPI impacts for Indiana this weekend.
Okay. The biggest thing I would say looking at the Big Ten is the Big Ten continues to be a very deep league, which was not the case in 2013, 2014, 2015. Granted, some publications are only expecting maybe 2 or 3 regional teams to come out of the Big Ten, but it could easily be higher than that. And more importantly, the bottom of the league is not as bad as it used to be. It used to be there were just teams that are absolute cakewalks. Nobody's a cakewalk now. Almost everybody's got at least one good guy who can throw on a Friday night, which is why the Hoosiers, even though they won those last two series last year, had struggled on Friday night, and it was because both those teams had good guys to throw that Friday night. So we're going to see more of that. You're not going to have a team only win 2 games in the Big Ten. You're going to have wins coming from all over the league. Every game is going to be competitive, and then you've also got really top-notch teams like Maryland, who is going to be competing talent-wise toe for toe with Indiana. You've got a team like Minnesota, who's got a huge number of bats, especially from the left-handed side, that could really put a rung, especially for the league title, because even though the league is more balanced than it used to be, there is still some teams that are on the lower end of that, and Minnesota gets to play almost all of them, while IU is going to play the cream of the crop of the league. So that's going to give Minnesota an opportunity to possibly go after a league title, even if their RPI wise ends up being quite as good as Indiana's. For this weekend coming through, Indiana is playing pretty much the toughest weekend out of the Big Ten. They're playing 2 teams from the Big 12. And then you throw in South Alabama, who's a ranked team in most publications, and then of course Coastal Carolina, who's hosting the tournament, and they were national champs 2 years ago. So we're looking at some really good competition for the Hoosiers coming up in the first weekend. And these are teams that traditionally win lots of baseball games, and that's what you're looking for. If they end up winning lots of baseball games, that's what's going to help the strength of schedule, which is going to put the Hoosiers in a better position come May to possibly host a regional or at least get into the tournament.
Carl, who do you see as a surprise team in the Big Ten? You mentioned some of the big teams that are competing against Indiana for the possible title, but who do you see as those teams that are maybe mid-level that could break out and maybe move up against those top teams?
Well, I mean, to some degree, you got to look at most experts are expecting Northwestern and Purdue to be back down, that they were kind of riding a high, and that they don't expect that to continue. I say watch out. They've got great coaches that have done fabulous things with those 2 programs, and you got to look out for them because they still got a lot of good talent there. Purdue is a team we need to take seriously. IU really needs to take Purdue seriously because I think they can do some things. And obviously, when they play the Hoosiers, they're going to be gunning for us. And the Hoosiers are going to be playing Purdue 4 times, three actual conference games plus a midweek up in West Lafayette that doesn't count towards the Big Ten standings, but it's still an RPI game. So I'd say we got to keep our eyes up for Purdue.
And you always have traditional baseball programs: Ohio State, Michigan State has been good in the past, and sometimes you get into a season and the preseason predictions are not accurate. Mm-hmm. We see that in other sports where teams, for whatever reason, injuries and so forth, fall down. So that's a little bit about what the Big Ten is facing this week, and Indiana has a chance to even hopefully win all 4, and we'll talk about these individual games here a little bit later. But even in losses, if you play tough teams, that's going to help down the stretch, as Carl said, with strength of schedule and RPI. So let's move to Cassidy now. Cassidy is just a wonder with numbers, and she has some incredible statistics. So if you would share with your listeners a little bit maybe about the stats you're looking forward to this weekend and maybe this season, and maybe even just a quick explanation of how you do all this.
Yeah, so I actually started doing these stats with a data analytics master's class that I was in while I was at IU, and I wanted a data set to play with on the software and figured IU baseball stats would be fun, but it's kind of limited what you can find, so I started bringing a scorecard out with me and collecting my own stats, and that scorecard has just gotten more and more detailed as I've kind of evolved what I'm looking for. And so I still keep that scorecard every game, whether I can see it on TV or streamed online, or I'm listening to Greg or early season Roger doing the play-by-play radio calls. I'm still sitting there with my scorecard, and then I'll translate it into Excel sheets, usable data, after each game, or sometimes over the weekend. That'll be my whole Sunday afternoon after the games.
Well, let me get you a little bit ready for Roger in the first weekend. It's a 2-2 count, and here's the pitch. Yeah!
Yes. Yes.
Thanks, Roger, for doing what you do. Because a grunt means something good's happened.
Yes.
So sorry to interrupt. And I just wanted to prepare you for opening weekend.
Yes, and his play-by-play has gotten better over the last couple of seasons, most definitely. But it's still tough trying to juggle his normal duties with the radio call too.
So what key stats are you looking for this weekend?
So this weekend, the first thing that stuck out to me was the strikeouts, because last year in opening weekend, this team averaged over 11 strikeouts a game, including 16 in the first game against Oregon State, which, granted, it was Oregon State who had a phenomenal year, but they were still double-digit strikeouts against Gonzaga. And they were a full 3 strikeouts above their average per game for the rest of the season. And so I actually looked back over. Yes.
I did. Sorry to interrupt. How long did it take for IU to improve those numbers? Is that just a North team playing outside thing? I think, or how long does it take?
I think that's a big part of it. I have my stats pulled up. Let's take a quick peek at strikeouts. They were kind of variable, but had even started to go down within the third week or so. Third week to a month. So right around the time that they're hitting those home games for the first time, you started to see them go down. I mean, the second Cincy game, the game at home, had 1 strikeout total. So they do start to go down relatively quickly. But even looking at the last few years, 2016 opening weekend, they were 2.5 strikeouts above average. 2015, they were about a strikeout above average. 13 and 14, this is where you see the difference with, 2013, a College World Series team, they were only a half strikeout above their season average during opening weekend. So it kind of balancing the aggressiveness, with the power. Last year was the first year since that 2013 that the Hoosiers averaged more than 3 extra base hits a game. So trying to balance those two is kind of interesting.
So we can get a good read this weekend on the number of strikeouts. A, we have a veteran team. B, is it a little bit of anxiety starting the season, and so we'll see. We don't have the average numbers to compare, but that is something that'll tell us maybe the direction going back all the way to 2013, where they didn't strike out all that much to start or throughout the season. So
yes, and the nice weather in Bloomington during the month of January could help with that, because they were able to be outside a bit more than you would expect in Indiana.
And this is the excellent analysis that Cassie will bring us, and we look forward to it every week. And you need to follow her on Twitter because it's remarkable what she does. Cassie, we're glad to have you do that. So, and fans, if you're listening, let us know. And there's some stats that we can share, and there's some stats maybe that we can't, but we'll let you know what if you want something, we'll try to have Cassidy come up with it. And now our next segment is going to be the story of the week. And Josh has done a really awesome job creating our website. A lot of time spent, and editor. There's no name to really say how much we appreciate Josh for what he's doing. And he's got the candy stripe background on the live video here, and he's done a good job. So he's going to be doing stories of the week for us on these podcasts. And Josh has a little bit of an interesting story for us today.
Okay. We didn't run the story on this on the website, but this last week I was fortunate enough to attend the Indiana Youth Coaches Clinic that the staff put on. And it was a great event. Coach Cheeseborough, Coach Bunn, Coach Lucas, and of course the GOAT Cooper was there running drills. And they went through. It was a very laid back atmosphere. They wanted input and very open with questions, but they would run through a drill, like a scenario. Hey, my guy's doing this, not snapping through on his pitches, and they'd show what drills they would use to correct that. And then it was neat because they would show the fundamentals and the way and why that drill would correct those. And then I would just highly recommend it to any coach in the area, youth coach especially, because Roger came out afterwards and he said, hey, we do this because it was free. We do this because if you start teaching your kids at 6 and 8 and 12 and in high school, it makes our job a lot easier, and our talent pool in the area is that much better. So, but it was a really neat event, and got to learn their practice routines. So when you go out to the practice,
Josh, here's a time for a little plug. What level do you coach and where?
Well, Drew just turned 6, so this would be his first year. We weren't going to let him play t-ball because I don't believe that's baseball. But so this would be his first year eligible, and I'm going to try to hold off a little bit longer, but I'm sure Mama's going to push really hard, and if she pushes for him to play, I'm going to make sure he's got somebody that knows what he's doing. So I'll help a little bit in that.
So you're getting ready, and I take it that this was on the field, right? So how was it like to be on Bart Kaufman?
It was in Mellencamp.
Oh, it was in Mellencamp because of the weather.
Yeah.
Okay. Still, it's awesome to be around college coaches, and a lot of college coaches in baseball, I think especially, but other sports, when they reach out to the community, that's a sign of how they want to give back as well as just win games on the weekend. So look for the youth coaches clinics and the player clinics they have throughout the summer and all of that too is really good, I would imagine.
Yeah, they do. Drew actually went. He was the first year he could go to one of the youth camps. So they start that at 5 and run it all the way up. They have prospect camps up high school, and they run them pretty much all summer long. And yeah, it's a great experience. If you've got kids, put them in it. It's not all that expensive to do. Get them in there. But one more note: Coach Lamonis wasn't able to attend, and because he was sick. And Coach Bunn and Coach Cheeseborough said that's the first day that they've ever seen him miss since they've been on his staff or with Cheeseborough since he was playing for him. So that's why he wasn't able to be there. But that shows his work ethic that he hasn't missed a day of work in however many years that's been.
And let's hope he's back and healthy for this weekend. I'm sure he is. And I know the weather the flu and stuff are all around Indiana has been bad. So hopefully he got it and got through with it so he won't have to face any of that throughout the season. So that's awesome. Look for the youth clinics. Indiana baseball is a complete program on the field, and they do a lot of good stuff off the field as well. Thanks, Josh. Okay, we're going to look now to a little bit of a preview of the upcoming weekend, and most weekends you play one opponent, and this weekend we play 4 straight different opponents in a preseason tournament down south. And we're going to start off playing Oklahoma and then Kansas State, then South Alabama, and ending up on Monday, February 19th, playing Coastal Carolina. So let's preview those in that order. And Cassidy, you have the Oklahoma Sooners. What can we expect from them this weekend?
Yes. So Oklahoma has been picked to finish in the 3rd to 5th range in the Big 12, depending on who you go by. Baseball America actually projects them as a number 2 seed in College Station, so Texas A&M. And they actually had a fairly good RPI last year, coming in at number 24. And they still decided to make a coaching change. So they have a brand new head coach in Skip Johnson, who was their pitching coach. And so pitching should be very, very strong for Oklahoma. But they did lose last year's closer. They are maintaining their starting rotation, headlined probably by right-hand pitcher Jake Irvin, who's a junior. I'm thinking he's probably going to be the starter on Friday when we face him. And from what I've seen, he hits about mid-90s with his fastball. He also has a slider and a changeup. But they also have an All-American in their outfielder, Steele Walker, who is also a junior. Baseball America has him as the number 1 2018 Big 12 prospect, and he hits for both power and average. possibly the best pure hitter in this year's draft. And so don't count out the bats either, especially Walker.
So it looks like it's going to be a solid matchup, like any start of the weekend matchup with two number ones going. And let's hope our veteran lineup can hit their returning starter and get into a bullpen that looks like it's rebuilding, and they maybe have some jitters on game one. Thanks, Cassidy, for that preview in Oklahoma. We send it to Josh now for a preview on Kansas State, which will be Saturday's baseball game.
Kansas State had their first winning season since 2013 when they were defeated by Oregon State in the Supers last season. So they were kind of on the uptick, but they did still finish last in the Big 12 and are projected to do the same this year by most outlets. They do have two freshmen All-American last year, both outfielders, one Brennan and one Thompson. So it'll be interesting to see how they've developed. If they make a jump, they might – in their sophomore season, they might be tough to handle for the pitchers. But I would have to think that Milto should be able to shut them down. So hopefully they can pick up a W Saturday.
Saturday looks to be a game that we probably should win, maybe, and you got to be careful saying that because the game of baseball is about failure, and
baseball.
And sometimes even the Mets find a way to so, there can be upsets. We now go to our Sunday opponent, South Alabama, and Carl has that preview.
Yes, South Alabama, this is an offensive team. They've got a series of really good bats. Not a huge power team, but if you go up and down the stat line, there's hardly a member of the starting lineup that doesn't have an on-base percentage over 400. These guys get on base. They put pressure on pitchers. They make teams go through lots of pitchers, and they find ways to score runs. And as such, they're predicted to be the conference champion out of the Sun Belt, which at this point, the Sun Belt, while not a Power 5 conference, is pretty much a power conference as far as baseball is concerned. So this is a big deal. This is a powerful team that has a lot of good bats. They are going to miss one of their top bats. Drew LaBounty fouled a ball off of his eye a week ago, and it will be out for the season. It was a real scary incident. Their shortstop. They do have a couple other options to plug in. As a team, they have had a lot of success with bringing in JUCO transfers. So they already have a shortstop JUCO transfer that might slide in there, and he had an on base over 400 at his JUCO location, and they also have a freshman option as well. They're not as strong on the mound. They were an okay team on the mound last season. And they did graduate. They did lose a couple of their top arms there. But again, this is a team that brings in a lot of JUCOs. They've got two solid JUCOs coming in for pitching, and it's very likely that given IU, this is going to be the fourth game for them. Well, it's the third game for IU. It'll be the fourth game for them. So I would expect possibly to see one of those JUCO arms. So it's one of those things you don't know. Some guy like Patrick McBride may be facing the Hoosiers, and it's possible that he's 6'5", got a 90 to 92 mile per hour fastball. He could be some trouble for IU. So this is going to be a big test game for the Hoosiers, and it may test that real depth that the Hoosier pitching staff in the bullpen has.
We'll find out who Indiana's third starter is if Kruger is moved back to the bullpen, and it'll be an interesting test against a good offensive team. So that's something to look forward to. South Alabama is playing a doubleheader on Saturday, and then playing us on Sunday. So this will be their fourth game in 3 days, which their arms will be down a little bit. So that might be more of an offensive game, and it'll be an interesting game for our new third starter again. But I think our depth, you're absolutely right. It'll test our depth, but I believe our depth will be okay. Chris, let's go to you for the fourth opponent, Monday's Coastal Carolina.
Okay, this will be the first game that's not played at ticketreturn.com field. They're going to actually play this on campus at Coastal Carolina. just to mention that. Coastal is picked second or third in the Sun Belt, depending on who you read. Everybody knows Coastal from 2 years ago. They won the national title. They have a big bat still in the lineup, which is Kevin Woody Woodhall. Last year, he hit 18 bombs and 60 RBIs, so that's a monster season, and he's still there. They have a second baseman, Corey Wood, who, I mean, this guy's numbers were wild as far as steals and getting on base. Feynman's going to have his work cut out for him if this guy gets on. I say we just keep him off base, and we don't have to worry about it. But, you know, I'm sure Feynman will be just looking to peg this guy out, whether it's the back pick or throwing him out at second. As far as their pitching, they have a guy, Jason Billis. He throws 100. He's a big first-round MLB prospect, but they haven't announced his role yet. He could be a number one starter. Then we obviously wouldn't see him. But he could also be that Andrew Miller role, which is the real popular thing these days. So, you know, they could be saving him for us. You know, he might pitch 4 innings Friday, and then 4 innings Monday. We don't know. But he sounds like a stud. We'll see what role he gets. As far as Coastal, they came over from the Big South. They're now in the Sun Belt. And they kind of got a raw deal last year. They won the conference. Then it came time for the tournament, and there was real bad weather, and the whole tournament turned into single elimination. So they lost one game and they were out, and it was supposed to be double elimination. So then, you know, South Alabama won that tournament and went on to the NCAAs. But Coastal was 22-7 in their conference. You know, their RPI was 59 last year, so that actually kept them out. And they were 2-8 against top 50, so that kept them out too. This is a good team, and you know, this should be a good matchup.
And 2 years removed from winning the College World Series. And I was out there that year, saw their first game, and I think I even got a Coastal hat somewhere hanging up in my man cave down here. So nice. We are just a few days away, and it sounds like we have a really solid opponents lined up for the first weekend. And the Hoosiers open up on Friday. So let's go around the room and get some final thoughts on this weekend and the season. We'll start with you, Josh, your final thoughts tonight.
I'm just ready to get going. We've been putting out articles and prognosticating for a couple months now, and it'll be nice to, you know, get out there and watch some product and get some answers to all the questions, see who's right and who's wrong.
Baseball season starting up always is a good thing. Cassidy, your final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm echoing Josh. I'm just excited to see what this team can do. I can't wait to see who's playing where. Especially, I'm really interested in that second base competition, see who goes there. But should be a good year.
Carl, your final thoughts tonight.
I don't like to say, but let's not read too much into exactly who we see on the field at different times, because there could be a lot of experimentation going on. I would not be shocked to see Milto held for South Alabama, and then maybe the number 3 guy going on Saturday against K-State. So there's some things that could be a little weird about this weekend. And
Chris, your final thoughts.
I think we have an excellent schedule starting off. You know, I did a little bit of look at the Big Ten and who they're playing this weekend, and they're not playing anybody. Only one other team is even playing someone that even is predicted to make a regional. And we have these 3 big games this weekend. I want to give, you know, the coaching staff, you know, great scheduling. And I know next weekend might be a little light as far as the competition, but then we got 4 against San Diego. So out of these 11 games, you know, I think it was a great job with the scheduling. I'm really looking forward to it. We're not playing cupcakes. We're going out there. We're playing some big-time competition. I'm fired up.
And my final thought is, watch for our defense this year. We talk about the veterans coming back in the lineup and the power that we have. And we talk about the arms and the experience of the arms, and all of that is true. But with Feynman catching, and we got some speed in the outfield with Gorski and Kalitha, and we got Houston and whoever solidifies that second base, I think we might have one of our better defensive teams in a while, and that's going to even help our veteran, our experienced pitching staff. So my final thought is let's see what we can do defensively as well as the other areas, and let's get this season started, because this weather around here with the ice and the snow is just – it's not nice, and baseball will at least bring us some joy this weekend. So that will do it for Talking Hoosier Baseball, or we got to come up with the name. Talking Indiana Baseball. I like Talking Indiana Baseball better.
We already made the Twitter account, so it's Talking Hoosier Baseball.
Oh, it's Talking Hoosier Baseball. Okay, there's the decision, and that's how we roll here. So it is right on the script. Talking Hoosier Baseball. Please find future podcasts on Sports Talk with Tonsoni, which can be found on your favorite podcast source, as well as on the tab on iubase.com. And while we're at it, please follow all of us, IUBase, on Twitter at IUBase17. And Chris, the new Talking Hoosier Baseball Twitter handle.
It actually, they choose what handle you're going to get, and it just came up at Hoosier Talking.
Okay, so at Hoosier Talking to find out more about these podcasts and visit iubase.com. Excellent website for a lot of information. We're just trying to support the program and bring some information to fans that are looking for another source besides just the normal places. So for the gang, I'm Brian Tonsoni. Go Hoosiers. Listen in this weekend, and in a few weeks, we'll see you at the BART. Thanks for listening.